don't have to know what you're, what was it? You don't have to look like you know what you're talking about because you're talking to a dummy. So literally, you can just dumb it. We can dumb it down to like a child, and like pretend we're kindergartners here, and just like tell me, as if someone who's never seen this. Because Aragorn, I saved the first time for you, basically, man, because I didn't look at any book. I didn't look at any, tutorial. Maybe I looked at some cards like that are related to me and stuff, but beyond that, I didn't look at anything. So,
Yeah,
just whatever your base knowledge is, I want to know. So let's go ahead and begin. The show is yours.
let's do it. Okay, are we live?
We're
Yeah,
live.
we are live. Cool. So yeah, thank you for inviting me on, Eugene. We've been planning this for a long time, and things keep coming up, and you know, just those things, isn't it? So yeah, really excited to talk about the tarot and the minor arcana today, and a lot of people, well, even some of the tarot big boys don't even look at the minor arcana. They just say that they're not as important as the major arcana, the major rites of passage in our spiritual journey. And they kind of don't include them in a lot of books, or if they do, they give them a very short treatment. But,
Wow.
I think that these minor arcana are what represent our kind of everyday sort of mundane, for want of a better word, existence. But that all adds up to the major rites of passages. How do we treat everyday life? What state of mind are we in everyday life? And if we're not aware of that, which is what the tarot is all about, is bringing awareness to our state of being, then how are we ever going to discover these major rites of passage in the major arcana? So that's kind of my take on it.
We can't skip half the story, right? And it kind of seems like, tell me if this is correct. It almost seems like the major arcana is kind of like the general, and then the minor is like the particular. It's almost like the big picture versus the details to the big picture, right?
Yeah, you can absolutely see it like that. Yeah, like the macrocosm to the microcosm. Um, and they're all interrelated. Each of the major arcana is astrologically aligned, numerologically aligned, and the same with the minor arcana. The major arcana rules certain minor arcana, for example, and each of them tells a story. They all tell a journey. With the minor arcana, what you're really looking at is the four realms of existence. So fire, water, air, earth, and the journey that each of those elements, both in the external world and in our internal world, takes from falling from source, from unity, all the way down the 10 sephira in the tree of life, in the Kabbalistic system, down to the 10, which is Malkuth in Kabbalah, which is the world manifest. So the ultimate realization of that energy. So if it's fire, all the way down to the 10 of wands, water, 10 of cups, etc. And then, you can read the minor arcana in two ways. Most people will read it, ace, which is 0, well, 1, all the way down to 10 and see it as a progression that way. But that's, again, like you said, that's
So would ace be like fire or something?
ace is like the potential. So it's all the potential of that energy. So the ace of cups is everything that could be water in potentia. So pure emotion, pure water, before it gets tainted by our ego, our everyday existence. So as for example, as the as the cups tend to progress, they start off really well, really pure, really harmonious. Then they get a little bit lost in the middle as ego comes in. There's some loss in there. There's learning about emotion and feeling. And then as you get towards the end of the cups, it kind of becomes more harmonious again, more loving, more pleasurable. Cups is quite a nice suit because it's water, so it's very flowing. It's not too hard on you. There is I'll pick out some as we go through to talk about specifically. Whereas
Very
like,
how a cup holds water, That's very interesting.
yeah, be foremost, be the cup. Tea enters the pot, it becomes the pot. Um, be water, my friend. So yeah, so that's kind of as I was saying, most people read it 0 or ace to 10 and see it as a progression that way. And that makes complete sense. You can see the journey of each suit as it goes along, and it makes sense because, like in astrology, every sign resolves the problems that the previous sign found. So Virgo is very good at picking out problems, criticizing, in order to make things better. And then Libra comes along to kind of smooth things over and make things peaceful, and it's the diplomat, you know. So that's the way it works in astrology, and the same thing in the tarot. Each suit kind of helps the previous one move beyond its limitation. So yeah, all the way ace to 10 makes sense. But then that's just one side, that's the fall. Then you've got the rising again, 10 back to ace. So the way I read tarot is usually in the tree of life spread. So we're talking about the chakras, we're talking about the falling of energy into matter. But then we have to look at how we rise.
You engineer it and then reverse engineer it, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what you're really looking at is the four elements in those four forms. And then the fifth element is the major arcana, which ties it all together. So that's kind of like your everyday experience of the minor arcana, and then you've got the major arcana, which is the big rites of passages, the general, like you said before.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I love it. So yeah, I mean, we can talk about a few of the cards if you like, and just go from there. Really, I mean, that's an ace right there. So that's what the aces look like. In the deck I use, the Rider Waite, all the aces are kind of being gifted by this hand of God. So it's the gift of material existence with the pentacles. So everything that matter can be. So a lot of time it's money, finances, jobs, environment.
Sorry, Pentacles is which element, Aarongorn?
Earth.
Earth.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, if you notice in this what's being gifted to us, in a lot of the older tarot decks, the pentacles were called coins or discs, but A.E. Waite changed it to pentacles because he understood that just seeing the earth element as purely matter, a purely dead thing, isn't true. There's magic in everything. There's magic in a way. There's magic even more in manifest world because it's the full expression of source. So that's why he coined it. Excuse the pun. Pentacles, because he put the pentagram within the coin to show this mastery of the five elements, this condensing of energy into our everyday experience. And yeah, often it is about finances, it is about jobs and careers and our environment, but most of the time, especially as you get towards the end of it, what the pentacles are really talking about is waking us up to not taking things for granted. Let me find the 10 of Pentacles for you. Right, so when we get all the way to the 10 of Pentacles, if you notice, none of these characters here are actually really interacting. They've got everything they want. They're comfortable. They've got a dynasty. The surroundings are beautiful and lush and secure. They don't need to worry about losing things. But they're taking it for granted because matter has gone all the way to the end of its journey. You know, earlier on in the deck, there's in the suit, there's a lot of concern about poverty, not having enough, scarcity. But by the time we get to 10, they're taking things for granted. And that's why I feel...
You know what's crazy, Aarongorn? I feel like that displays like today, like we're approaching this time of like bliss and freedom and everything's provided, but eventually like people get complacent and stuff, you know? So it's important that the poverty mindset doesn't carry over from when you were actually poor into when you're rich. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of the dangers of the Brave New World kind of society. They had everything taken care of. Yeah, it was a totalitarian regime, but just think about if it wasn't a tyranny and they just had free energy and everything provided, then there's a danger of this where we don't actually value what we have. If you notice, none of these characters are actually interacting well with each other. You know, the only one that was looking at any of the other one is the wife, and she's kind of looking over her shoulder a bit anxiously at her husband. He's not paying attention. The child is kind of a bit bratty. He wants whatever he wants. He's pulling on his mother. So what they're not noticing is the magic everywhere. Like, look at all the magical symbols on this card. You've got the black and white checkerboard, which is pure magic, you know, potential and realization of that potential combined. You've got some scales in there somewhere, representing cosmic law, cosmic balance, all the hermetic principles. And what we're really trying to do is, you know, these guys here are caught up in everyday dramas because they've been all the way through matter. They've been from ace to 10. They've seen it all. They're a bit bored. They're kind of just caught up in daily drama. But the true seeing of this card is when we become this elder, this Gandalf-like character, because this is Odysseus, basically. He's been on his journey. He's seen the world. He's been called to adventure. And now he's come back. And like Odysseus, the only ones that actually recognize who he truly is, which is the magician, is his dogs. Because he's dressed he's dressed as a beggar, essentially. So yeah, one of the higher messages of this card, because again, they're taking things for granted, is be very careful about who and what you take for granted, because there's so many old stories about beggars and you know, old women turning up at people's doors, and because they look a bit shabby, they look a bit world weary, they get thrown away, and they only find out later that that was actually God, that was the Buddha, that was, you know, Krishna. And
That
if
was
you
the
just
Odyssey. That was the sitting Odyssey, right?
yeah, exactly. So this guy's kind of looking in on those inner dramas and knowing that there's a whole world outside of that. There's a whole other 3 suits of existence, you know, cups, wands, swords, as well as the major arcana. And he's not caught up in this drama. He's just watching and just kind of, he's not above it because he's in it, but he's not attached to it, essentially. So that's kind of where this 10, because all the 10s basically at the end of the cycle, so they're the 1 and the 0. They're ready to be reborn.
And that tower looks like a 1, and the arc could be a 0. You know what I mean? That's what I was noticing.
Yeah, absolutely. And not actually, this is one of the few towers where there's 2 windows in the topmost turret. Most of them have 1. So I think that's probably in this case because it is the Pentacles and it's all the way at the end of Pentacles. This is duality. This is kind of being stuck and needing to be reborn into something more spiritual, basically. So yeah,
And that makes sense. 'Cause Earth is kind of duality. Like the Pentacles you were saying was Earth is kind of the materiality split, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, let's go back. Let's go back 1 and look at the 9.
I don't know if you've ever heard of the card game Yu-Gi-Oh, but I think that's why I'm also very interested in tarot, because I mean the main thing was like a magician too, so it's just hilarious.
Right. I've heard of it. I've never played that one. I know it's very popular. So yeah, that as we go kind of backwards from the 10 back to the 9, you kind of see what the next stage of this journey back to source would be, which is to become independent of those family dramas, to be self-aware, because when you're caught in that interplay all day, every day with, you know, just family, friends, money, job, all that kind of stuff, even though it's comfortable, you're never actually self-reflective. You're not disciplined enough to find the time to carve out, you know, your life and your needs and your desires. So that's exactly what this woman is doing, is creating her own inner garden where she can take the time to be self-aware. And yeah, it's Pentacles, so it's about carving out the life she wants in Middle Earth. Yeah, absolutely. So it's less about meditation stuff, but it is about priorities and being self-aware enough to kind of be driven to go for those priorities. And it's the 9, so it's continual regeneration. This is kind of the fruition, really, you can see it, of of each suit is the 9. The 9 is where you get to the high point of that emotion. For example, when we look at the 9 of Swords, when I say high point, the 9 of Swords is actually the worst of the swords because it's taking thought to the extreme, and then it's ready to be reborn with the 10. You see, does that make sense?
Yes, and I just love that, man, because I mean, just think about it. I mean, for me, that's exactly where I'm at. I need to find my own space in all of like the space of humanity, kind of a thing, right? And so I've been feeling that card so much, Aragorn. And at the same time, I liked how the trees were kind of looking like temples almost. And then the lady, almost like a feminine energy, was interacting with a bird. And birds usually have that, you know, higher bird's eye view. Like it's almost like clairvoyance, right? It's like in every movie, it's like they scout for you and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, it was just very interesting. I will say, Raji, I think will join just for 5 to 10 minutes to say hi to you. And yeah, but just please continue explaining as you were doing.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. It'd be good to see Raji. I've not seen him for a while. Okay, so yeah, I mean, one of the things to note about all of the cards is that they have astrological correspondence. So that one we just looked at, for example, is Venus in Virgo. So this is all about, problem solving, but creatively. So again, finding out what gives you passion and what moves you to kind of follow your goals, and then having that Virgo energy. So Venus is great for creation, passion, all those really feminine, lovely energies, but then Virgo's really good for prioritizing. Hey, Raji.
Hey, what's up, Aarongorn?
Yeah, he's describing the 9th of Pentacles. There's 4 suits in the minor arcana, and those are the 4 elements, Raji. And at the same time, the major arcana, Aragorn was saying, was Aether. And so right now he's describing the Pentacles, which is Earth. And then he just described 10, now he's describing 9. And yeah, please continue, Aarongorn. It was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, so just to recap, Raji, you can read the suits in 2 ways. You can read them from Ace to 10, so linearly. So that would be falling from source down into its highest expression of the 10 in its fullest manifestation. But then you can also read them going back, you know, climbing back up to source to reunite all that energy back together. So depends on the read.
You know, it's amazing. It sounds like Raji's model.
Yeah, does it?
Well, because basically 10 is the black canvas, right? So you could look at the 10th dimension as the void, and everything comes down to partake in the material play. So it's very interesting how the minor arcana has 10, that increment, the 10 fingers. You know?
Yeah. Is that based on the Kabbalistic tree of life, Raji?
No, it's based on no, like I don't know how I can share it. It just came to me as a download, the 12 dimensions, and I realized that the 5 dimension is Eden, and then I just grew on that from different. I took it from different sources like the Bible and other things. But yeah,
it sounds quite similar then to the way matter falls from, well, not matter, but the way spirit falls in the tree of life down into its fullest expression.
Yeah, so would you agree that the 9 is the star, Aarongorn?
In what way?
Yeah, I think he's not fully familiar with the model, but
in my model, when you say coming up to down, the 10th is the void that we call the black void or nothing, and the 9 is the stars,
right?
And that's the visible light. And then the 8 is the dragon, the 7 is the archangel, the 6 is the angel, the 5 is the genie and the fairy, the 4 is the king and the queen, the 3 the people, the 2 is the slave, and the 1 is the NPC.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably, I think it's reversed round, because the way I have it, or the Kabbalists have it, would be 1 is source, is Keter, your crown chakra, and then 10 right at the bottom is Malkuth, which is your root chakra. So probably very similar, just switched around.
Yeah.
Aragorn brought up a very interesting point. So when he decodes the minor arcana, he does it forwards and backwards. So he does the down journey into, or it could be the opposite, right? He does beginning to end, but also end to beginning, because the beginning is the end.
So it's a cycle. So it's not like this, it's like this then.
Yes.
Yeah. Or more accurately like this. It's like a lightning strike. Yeah.
Electricity.
But then you've got actual, because you've got Kater, which isn't really source. It's kind of, it's where it's the first realm, but then you've got a place called the Arth on the world tree, which is source, infinite potentiality. And it's just above the heart chakra, and it's just below the third eye chakra. Just below the throat chakra, just above the heart chakra. And that's where everything comes from.
Wait, super quick, guys. Is there 40 cards in the minor arcana, Aragorn? Because 4 suits and 10.
No, there's 56 because you've got the court cards as well, which are personality types essentially. So you got, for example, this is the King of Swords. So swords is thought. It can be action sometimes as well, mental processes essentially, and communication actually as well. So the King of Swords is kind of the most mature of the family, because you've got four members of the family. You've got King, Queen, Knight, the Son, and what's called the Page in Rider-Waite card. I see it as the Princess, because the Page is a boy essentially, but so, in order for it to be married up, it needs a daughter. Really, you need that duality.
Aragorn, I have a question to you. Is it okay if you can draw a card and you can explain what that card means? And I would like to share an intention about today's video, what we three are doing, and if you could draw a card a bit of what is going on right now with these interactions.
Beautiful. And right before that, I want to add, before we go too far, you said King of Swords. Well, in the word swords is words, and you say the communication, that kind of stuff. And it's also the sine wave in the word of another sine wave. So it's the word in the Taurus field, because it said swords. So it's the Taurus field of the word, and everything, it comes from the word, right?
Yeah, the sound.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's S words is sacred words. And what you're really doing in the swords is learning how to transcend ego-based thought and the communication that comes from that, and get back to the Ace of Swords. I won't go through to find it, but that's pure thought before. It's like the Ace of Cups is pure emotion, pure water. Ace of Pentacles is pure materiality, and Ace of Wands is pure spirit, pure energy, pure inspiration. As they fall down, it's falling down into worldly existence. So it's taking on human form more and more and more. Whereas that initial ace is divine. It's and that's really why the journey goes down, because it's coming into form. But then the goal is to get back up to that pure thought. Because if you look at the swords, and we'll pull a card in a second, Raji.
Yes.
Let's look at the final 2 cards of swords, just to show you where thought takes you in the end. So you've got the 9 of Swords here. We spoke about this last night on the show. This is the kind of the fullest expression of thought, where it's always going to take you. And like I say, the 9 is the fullest expression, because the 10 is where you kind of see through that element and see the limitation, and you're ready to be born again, and start rising back up. But yeah, this 9 of Swords is where you are, all your thoughts are 100% real. You're taking everything so seriously. You're in a nightmare kind of state. You'll believe everything your mind tells you.
It's like Neo, right, in the Matrix.
Yeah, and that was my point last night. He's when he's having those psychotic breaks, he's indecisive, because his thoughts are always going to lead him to be dualistic, because they're never holistic, until you get back to that Ace of Swords, which is where you're not taking thought for yourself.
I call that the meta state, when you're in meta brainwave.
Right. Yeah.
Charlie calls it beta wave.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not you doing the ego thinking. It's not for egoic purposes. It's for it's a tool, and it comes to you to inspire you and help you. But if you notice, you can stay in this state as long as possible, as long as you want, because none of these sword points have tips. So this is showing that those thoughts will just go round and round and on and on and on. Because it's the 9, It's continual regeneration.
Well, no end, right? So it's going to infinity, huh?
Yeah, yeah. But that's kind of the negative side of it. But the reason that we get into this state is usually because we have taken on the anguish of the world, of the fallen world, and we feel like there is another way, and we're in anguish and we're in despair because we know it's not the natural way. And
yeah, we're in despair of the old programming, right? There's new wine, so we can't pour it in old wineskin.
Exactly, yeah. It's the Kali Yuga. This is the high point, or the low point, more accurately, of Kali Yuga. So the lowest point of human consciousness. And that's shown if you look at you probably won't be able to see it, but on his bedspread, it's a mixture of roses, so love, passion, feeling for the anguish for the world, but then it's interspersed with lots of zodiac signs, which is showing, that it is a cycle, it's a drama. And even this state is necessary for consciousness to do what it needs to do. For it to do this and to evolve. It needs this.
It's natural. It's natural to feel sad when you let go of everything you knew, right?
Yeah. That card is almost like the moment you take the red pill and you start to see, first of all, it goes a bit wobbly, and then you start to see that everybody is a bloody battery, a copper top. That's that. Oh my God. My conspiracy theorist friends were right.
Yeah, that's when you're realizing that you were wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
And all the crazy people I thought was wrong was right.
Yeah. And it's Mars in Gemini as well. So it's that having taken the action to make a change, to wake up, then you realize that, oh my God, I've got to do the Gemini. I've got to actually find out what is real. I've got to take both sides of the argument and discover through objectivity what the truth is.
Yeah, that's when they call us. I am sorry. I know you told me, and you were right all along.
I've not had any of those calls.
No,
I don't think. Oh, maybe one.
I guess they need a little more ignorance before they stop.
Yeah, exactly.
Gemini is, I think, in the 12. It's I am, I have, I think.
I remember a friend of my friend. He said he called him after a week and said that he was right about the flat Earth. Yeah, it's like, okay, you were right.
Which is happening more and more and more. It's just maybe it's the way I was telling people. They've not come back to me. I've got Sagittarius rising.
The more the matrix is glitching, the more we can see through it, no?
Yeah, exactly, and that's what this next card actually is. It's that this is the end of thought, and again, ready to be reborn. So this is where thought will take you to ruin, to death, to like Thorin. Thorin went all the way to his paranoia in The Hobbit, and he had to get to this. He had to die essentially in order to be Christed, because he could not snap out of his thinking mind until the very, very end.
Yeah, so, Raji, Thorin is the dwarf king in The Hobbit.
Yeah, but I don't remember the dwarf king in The Hobbit.
Okay.
It's you can basically look at this as Boromir too.
Yeah, Boromir. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, both of them possessed by paranoia, feelings of inferiority. Sorry, Raji, say again.
Boromir had a lot of arrows inside of him, and this is the same. He has a lot of swords inside of him. Yeah.
But both characters had to die to be redeemed, and that's kind of what this is. You have to die to thought. You have to let go, because until you do, everything seems black and cloudy, and there's no truth, there's no blue sky. But as soon as you do, you realize that this yellow, this dawn, is here. You can be reborn, and if you notice, he's actually making the sign of benediction with his hand, which means he's risen to another state, to a higher state, even though he's dead. Yeah, and he's looking over to these new shores, because he's realized that you can only do this so long. and then you need to change.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So you need to. Your thoughts needs to die, right?
Yeah, Bruce Lee says, learn to die before you die. And even Krishnamurti's like, die to the me, die to thought, die to time, you know?
But nobody wants to die.
Because nobody wants to get the parasite out. Sorry, keep going, Aarongorn.
No, it's good. It's all good stuff. And that's the thing, is that surrender, isn't it, to death in everyday life. The more you die every day, the more it's nothing, you know? And you can die to thought every single time. Every single time a thought pops in, just by seeing it just by witnessing as it not yours, it's not my thought, it's a thought.
Yeah.
In the total experience, it's a feeling. It's not my, like the true I, not the false I, witnesses it, but it's not attached to it. But if you attach to it, then you're temporal. It's like what Nisargadatta Maharaj always said. His teacher said, focus on the I am. If you do just that, you will become enlightened. You'll be liberated. Because if you think about it, I am comes before happy, sad, in pain, in pleasure. If you identify with pleasure or pain or sad or whatever it is, you're temporal, because that cloud in the sky that thing is temporal. It passes. As soon as you identify with it, that becomes you, and you're taken away from the I am. The I am is eternal.
Then I have a question to you. Is it true that when we say I am happy, we create a vibration? Because emotions are vibrations, right? But when we say I am, we are stopping the vibration and we start to radiate.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Like Santos was saying, radiation. That comes before the vibration.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you're tapped into source, aren't you? You're tapped into where any vibration comes from. And that non-attachment, you know, if sadness comes up, but you're not attached to it, you see it, but is it having the same hold?
Okay, so everybody wants to, so in the end, what does everybody wants? Everybody wants to have the ecstasy of feeling, no? That is what everybody's looking for, no?
Yes, everyone is searching for a feeling outside of the now. And this is the thing, guys. So, gentlemen, really, there's nothing you can do but die to the now. There is nothing you can do. You know what I mean? There is no option. And that's I guess, kind of what awareness is. But I love what Aarongorn said, because in the true self, it's not me. It's not about egocentrism. The true self is humanity. That's why Krishnamurti always says, I don't represent just me. I represent mankind. You know, I represent everyone. That's why I have the responsibility of everyone. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So in the true self that the I am that Aarongorn was talking about, that's the great unifier. There's no separation in that, because then we have to be on the same team.
Yes, and that is when you zoom out from yourself and speaking on behalf of humanity, on behalf of we and not me, right? Because there is only us, one team, and that's the team of light, the team of truth, and the team of love.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, and even beyond that, there's only one source. So yeah, we're mankind, but that's one frequency of consciousness. You know, I love that Rumi poem, you can call it, and it says that consciousness sleeps in minerals, dreams in plants, wakes up in animals, and becomes self-aware in humans. So it's, you know, it's consciousness. That's it. Everything is consciousness.
What you were saying there about Rumi, that's the four truths of Sufis. So exactly as you say, because the last one, which is baptized by fire, that is the human state. You know, Eugene, it's true. The four states.
You're talking about it with Santos, yes or no?
Yeah. First is earth, then it's water, then it's air, and then it's fire.
Beautiful. And then the fire is the phoenix. But Aarongorn, could you pick a card for us? Would that be too much to ask?
Just have good timing. I literally just shuffled. Okay, so yeah, I mean, take this with a pinch of salt, because the way I read, when I do a reading for someone, I reset the entire deck. So I put it all back in the order it's supposed to go in. You know, I'll cleanse it with Palo Santo. I'll and do something called washing it rather than shuffling it like I did then. But I haven't got room on my desk, but it's still appropriate. I can still see a meaning in this. So it's the Six of Cups. So the six, as you rightly pointed out last night, Eugene, is communication. But this is about the communication of feeling, and particularly in the Six of Cups, it's about nostalgia, which is funny because nostalgia came up in the Matrix decode last night, and nostalgia is the great remedy because it's
Yeah, Roger, if you don't remember, Morpheus says there's nothing like nostalgia to calm you down. Remember when Matrix took the red pill again and he came to
Yes.
the
Yes, and also earlier today we did a movie like 1 hour ago when we talked about time machine and how it is to feel to go back. No.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. And that's exactly what this card is. It's reminiscing on the sweet experiences of life and drawing on that energy to kind of rejuvenate you. So, I mean, I'm getting from this conversation with you guys, it's like, yes, I have friends in my life, but most of them have dropped away. I've got maybe two, apart from you guys, that I speak to regularly every week. I've probably got two other friends, not including Melissa.
Hey guys, I
So
need to
this
go.
is
Ciao, ciao.
nice.
Thank you,
Love
Raji.
you guys. Ciao.
But that's so true, Aarongorn. I have none of my old friends have stuck around, it's just, yeah.
So this is nice because this kind of feels a bit like, when you have childhood friends and you can just, you can say whatever you want. You don't have to worry about pushing someone's buttons or triggering them or whether Agent Smith is going to pop up. None of that happens in this card. This is just about pure loving communication between sometimes it's between a mentor and someone receiving that. So I guess, in a way that's true because I'm passing on some ideas about tarot. So yeah, but it's about innocence and smelling the flowers and taking the time to be in the moment and enjoy that, because it's Scorpio, this card as well. It's Sun in Scorpio. So it is about creative energy and the correct use of sexual energy, and not in a homosexual way, but that passionate way to kind of bring about ideas and using that energy wisely rather than wasting it. So that's all the positive sides, which I'm kind of taking from this in our discussion. Usually when you look at the minor arcana and the major arcana, but
What's
particularly
the negative side? You can't say
I will go into that. But usually to be able to kind of determine whether to go with the negative or the positive. Some cards don't really have a negative. You kind of have to look at the other cards that come around it and your intuition as well. But yeah, the negatives of this card is like idealizing the past and getting stuck there. So, for example, if you had a great childhood and it was safe, it was secure, there was no problems, you can easily come out of the present moment for this idealized version of the past.
Just like Niobe, right? Just like the general with.
Yeah, exactly. She's got this idealized version of the now, really, because she's in denial about the truth. But the other thing is that this is so I think it was Freud. For all his flaws, Freud got a lot of things right, and he noticed that there's something called the pleasure principle that children go through, and in order to become a mature adult, they have to kind of grow out of that pleasure principle, which is getting stuck in hedonic life, only seeking the things that feel good, short-term pleasure, because remember it's Scorpio, so wasteful sexual energy, using your energy to go for like fast foods, all those kind of things. The pleasure principle is when we get stuck in that short-term gratification. But in order to kind of grow out of that, we need to get involved in what's called the reality principle, which is knowing that, good things come to those who wait, who are disciplined, who can forego pleasure in the moment in order to kind of work towards something. And that's kind of what the next card in the sequence is about, is the Seven of Cups. That's about where we're actually figuring out what it is that's going to bring that long-term gratification, because in this world, there's so many fantasies and distractions and
pleasures, attachments.
yeah, exactly. And they're all pretty much false, and they're all short term, leave you burnt out, and will never can fulfill that. The reason we go for the reality principle is because we know that there's something that is long lasting and will give us satisfaction, rather than these short term fixes which burn up our energy and ultimately make us feel empty. And this is what addiction is. Just a quick tangent. Addiction is using a substance to try and fill a hole that substance itself created. So let's look at smoking, for example. You smoke a cigarette, and I used to smoke, so there's no judgment, but you smoke a cigarette, first one tastes horrible, doesn't do anything for you, and you're like, why on earth would people do this? That's pretty much every single first person. There's no smoker that goes, oh yeah, I really like this, I'm going to get addicted to it, or I'm just going to keep doing this and I won't get addicted. But every single smoker goes, how can people get addicted to this? But what happens and this is the false pleasure we're talking about, as soon as you put out that cigarette, the nicotine starts withdrawing from your body. So you feel empty, you feel insecure, and this is all very subconscious because remember, it's the first time. So it feels like hunger essentially, and this is why people go for more food when they quit smoking. Because
it's like a serotonin dopamine depletion or something, right?
Right, I'm not sure, but yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, because dopamine is the desire chemical, neurotransmitter. But to get back to my point, you stub out a cigarette, your body withdraws from nicotine, so you feel a bit empty, a bit insecure, like something's missing. As soon as you have another cigarette, that empty withdrawal gets filled back up again. So the void that gets created by the first cigarette, it decreases. So you feel better. You feel like, I needed that. But what you're not realizing is it's the cigarette itself that created that void, or shall we say, made a void bigger that was already there from childhood trauma, from falling into duality, attached, whatever you want to, you could go as deep as you want with it. But the main point is that nicotine seems to fill that void a little bit without you realizing that actually it created a hunger itself for nicotine. And then the more along you go, the more you need, because that void just it doesn't ever fill up completely. You get tolerant to it. So it reduces a little bit, but then it gets a bit bigger, reduces a little bit. Every time you smoke a cigarette, it gets a little bit bigger. You need more and more and more and more. But what you don't realize that as soon as you stop, and you stop in the right mindset, that 3 days is what it takes for that physical monster to die. After that, there's no more physical withdrawal. What there will be, if you don't do it in the right way, is the mental withdrawal. Like I used to have a cigarette here and I feel like I'm missing out. But the way you kill that is to realize that actually the only thing it ever did was create a hunger, which it then seemed to solve. Does that make sense?
100%. That the cigarette actually created the missing out feeling. So if there was no cigarette, there would be no missing out feeling at all.
Mm-hmm. That's all it takes is the right, and that's the Seven of Cups. Let me find it. The right seeing of something, because then with the physical withdrawal, and this goes for alcohol, cannabis, anything that you can get addicted to. Food, yeah, sugar, especially sugar, massive. That feeling of physical withdrawal is nothing. It's like wearing a pair of tight shoes. And that's what the way I stopped is a method called Alan Carr's Easy Way. And they describe it as, it's like wearing a pair of tight shoes, so any addiction, just for the pleasure of taking them off every hour. You go, that felt good. What I'm going to do now is put them back on.
That's hilarious. That's a great analogy, because basically the act is useless, You're basically just enjoying coming out of discomfort or something. It's so paradoxically stupid.
And what we're really trying to do is get back to this childhood state, this idyllic state, where we feel like there was no problems. And don't get me wrong, this isn't true for everyone's childhood, because a lot of people have really bad childhoods. But they can just get as stuck in that as easily as you can get stuck in the past about a good childhood. If you notice
Aarongorn, I think you're exactly right, because I didn't have the best childhood, but I made the best of it. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. So you can't let what happened in the past define you. So I love that, man, because there were still nostalgic moments that were great in my childhood, and I still have those moments,
Yeah. And in either case, what's happening is when we get stuck here, when we don't move on from this, which is that pleasure principle, we are constantly being drawn out of the moment of the now, which is asking you to face whatever it is. It doesn't mean that we can't use nostalgia when it helps us to rejuvenate and look back, and it can be nice, but at the same time you can't get stuck there, because then you're out of the now, and you're not facing truth. But again, just really quickly before we move on to the 7, if you notice in the top left, we have this idea that everything was safe and secure. But actually, there's an armed guard here protecting these children. So that's saying that, just because you didn't see it didn't mean that there wasn't a need for that protective element. What we're seeing in the world now is just proving, that just because your childhood, or perhaps it was, abusive, or God, even worse, but at the same time, if it wasn't, you can't take that for granted, because we know the truth about what's been going on, especially underground. Okay, so yeah.
My so-called bad childhood was a joke compared to the kids underground.
Yeah, it's not even a childhood, is it, for those underground? It's
For
just
those underground, it was just a quick laugh. My life is just a laugh. It was just simple,
You're still in childhood. I'm joking. Although technically, you're not an adult in astrology until your first Saturn return. So there's no disrespect to you.
What is that, 30 years?
Yeah, 28, 29, 30.
I see.
Yeah, so you've got that to look forward to.
Darn you!
But it's just one of those things, isn't it? It's no disrespect. It is what it is. Yeah. I know for myself, I did not grow up until I was 30. After my first Saturn return, that's when I felt more or less an adult, more or less. But the important thing is to not then get stuck in adult mode, because we need to draw on this childhood energy, childlike energy, to keep that inner child.
You're adult, but you're a child, bro.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's true. That's why that mercurial kind of energy will help, because you can transition between the two worlds when you need to, in the world, but not of it. We're all consciousness. How can you get stuck in one state of mind? It's like these, when you're in the Emperor, just to go quickly to the major arcana, you are so serious and so driven and so ambitious that you're never in that childlike state of mind. You're always in stern, doing the right thing, like that King of Swords we saw before. It's like, I know exactly what needs to be done and how to do it. Whereas the childlike state of mind will just be like, I don't know. I'm just going to do what he's doing in the moment. But you can transition between the two, is my point.
Yeah, it's funny because it's a blessing and a curse to be easily distracted, because to be easily distracted is kind of naive. You know what I mean? To be caught up and absorbed by an idea so quickly, because that's what children are. So it's very interesting, just like you said with the guard in the background, there needs to be an element of a parent where there's security, and then a child where there's practically no security at all.
Yeah, and it's that's kind of what the growing up process to me is. The individuation process is maturing and getting into the reality principle, whilst at the same time being able to draw on that inner child energy to the full energy, because that's what's going to keep you going through all of it, is that curiosity. But at the same time, not being, like you said, distracted between so many different things. And that's what this next card is, really.
And right before, did you know cure is the core of curiosity? And cure and core are the same word.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because unless you get curious about your problems, about the things that are keeping you stuck, how are you ever gonna, you just accept it then? You Neo, well, Mr. Anderson, stuck in that loop, in that modal, never moving on. And that's kind of what this is then, is Neo breaking out of that pleasure principle. He's drinking his coffee every day, he's going to the gym, all the little things that feel like making him feel good. But then he's starting to go, hang on a minute, are these blue pills really giving me that satisfaction? Yeah. So, but at the same time, he's still looking out there He's still looking out there for the answers. When Bugs arrives, he's still looking out there. If you notice with this 7 of Cups, this figure here is so transfixed with all the things in the world that he or she thinks is going to bring them peace, bring them happiness, joy, an end to suffering. They're all represented here in these cups. But while the gaze is so fixated out there, this character's in shadow because they don't know themselves. They're not looking at the real source of satisfaction, of joy, which is the self, and not in the satanic egocentric way, just in the realization that you are it. You are ultimate consciousness experiencing itself as an individuated being. We are one, but we're not the same. So stop focusing out there on all these false pleasures. You've even got this. I've started to see this one here. When I first started my tarot journey, I thought this cup here represented enlightenment, the Holy Ghost, the Spirit, whatever you want to call it. But now I'm starting to see it as no, none of these cups are it, because he's fixated out there. This is the New Age cult. This is false light, false enlightenment. Manifest a Ferrari. Don't worry about it. Be completely passive. Yeah. All this kind of stuff. So that's that New Age bullshit, basically. Yeah. You got beauty here, sex. You got worldly success, victory. You got fears, the dragon we can get fixated on. What else we got? Wealth, clearly.
You got a snake on the top too, right? I think.
Yeah, on that one. So that could be fears as well. That could be animal. It could be knowledge. It could be lots of things. I've never quite figured out what this tower is here. What do you reckon that might be?
Is it like a crystal-looking tower or something? What is it?
It's like a blue tower.
It kind of looks like Hogwarts a bit, no?
Yeah, it could be. Yeah, it could be magic. It could be seeking to take heaven by force. Yeah,
and so this is the thing. So when I see 7, I always think 7 vices, 7 virtues. So you know what I mean? So I don't know if that helps with anything. But.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You could even see it as the because you got the 7 scales in music, haven't you? And then you've got the 7 true notes, but then you could also hit 7 bum notes, which isn't going to make good music. So.
And speaking of 7 notes, there's 7 major and 5 minor. Very interesting, right? Major, minor, arcana, the connection there. Because in music, you need both, Yeah. And
absolutely.
Aarongorn, I wrote this down, but I don't have it up. It just came back to me. And minor notes are often described as like I don't know if it's like condescending or you know what I mean. It's kind of like more of a sad, right? Or am I wrong?
Yeah.
Like a major key is kind of more uplifting and happy, and so I think there's that element to the minor arcana where it's like, since we're more down low and in the material, it's like it's a tragedy, but it has both. It has this redemption aspect to it too. Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And it depends on the suit. As I said before, like the swords starts with the Ace of Swords, which is about clear seeing, clarity, cutting through the illusions, pure thought before it's tainted by egoic desire. And it's not you taking thought, it's just coming to you, inspired thought. But then as you go along, the swords pretty much are all pretty dreary, really. There's
he who shall kill by the sword shall die by the sword.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, and then, this is an interesting one to look at, really, the King of Swords, because, as I said, he's the father of the family. So in a way, he's the most mature aspect of the swords, but he's also very stuck there because all the kings are the energy of that suit, but turn to like social responsibility. So the Queen's a bit more creative. She can use the swords to kind of turn sorrow, because that's what the swords really is about sorrow and conflict a lot of the time, and learning to communicate, turning all those things into wisdom. That's what the Queen's about. Whereas the King is very, very, very practical. So this is like the politicians of the day, really. And especially when it's upright, this is the politicians that go in for the right reasons, want to change things, want to help, want to lift humanity up, but then discover the system, the matrix, and the practicalities. So then they start to make more and more and more decisions based on pragmatism, not idealism, which means that, you know, they can be more and more compromised as time goes on. Doesn't mean that they all are, but the actions they take are basically based on real life, rather than creating something completely new. So yeah, what I was saying about the swords is that, yeah, as it goes on, they get worse and worse and worse, pretty much, until you get this. And then
until you can't get possibly worse, huh?
Not really, but well, the 9 is actually worse, because the 9 is all black. There's no dawn. There's a never ending to that pain and suffering.
No.
Yeah, until you transcend it, until you move to this 10, which is the seeing through of identification with thought. Yeah, all these swords.
Would you say the 9 is kind of like falling in the abyss and 10 is kind of hitting the bottom of it?
Yeah, basically. Yeah. And like Charlie said last night on the show, you only can fall so far. Yes. And then you have somewhere to kind of push back against. That's that 10. That's I'm ready. It's like the 10 of Swords is basically that old saying, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over, but expecting different results. That's when you go, oh, okay, I've been doing the same thing. The 9 is actually the insanity, and that's why they're doing this. Exactly. Whereas the 10 is the seeing through of that, basically. And we just find you another. It's
like the denial of the inevitable, and then 10 is like the accepting of what was inevitable, or the happening.
It's letting go, because the 9 will just continue that thought pattern of, oh my God, the world's so dark, it's a nightmare, it's the matrix. And this is where a lot of conspiracy theorists get stuck. You know, that my NHS background, I met a lot of people when I was doing my training that had seen what we have seen, but they just could not handle it, and it snapped them because they tried to do something about it, or they tried to tell people, and that resistance from peer pressure, resistance from the peers and telling them that they're crazy and, you know, all this kind of stuff, just they couldn't handle it and they broke. Well, break isn't the right through. They were seeking a breakthrough because they were trying to get past that gaining value from society. But because we're so trained to gain our value from other people, the psyche and the ego just could not accept it. So they had a psychotic break, which really is a breakthrough if treated in the right way and not dosed up with chemicals. But that 9 of Swords is that it's, oh my God, I can see, but no one else can. And up until quite recently, that was the vast majority of people. Whereas now, it seems to me like it's getting more and more accepted that, the bloody mainstream media is printing news, which is basically telling you exactly what we've been saying for years. So, of course, it's going to be more accepted.
Yeah, mainstream media was saying like a QAnon or whatever, and this black guy recorded it on his phone like always on the TV, and I posted it on Facebook saying, "What the FUC?" Because I'm like, this makes no sense. Like, now the media is completely on our side. Hello, Mockingbird? Like, what?
Exactly. Yeah, it's absolutely bizarre to watch from after being in that, not quite the 9 of Swords, but sometimes not quite having the break, because I think I've been lucky because
oh my gosh, and negative 48 says there'll be 10 days of darkness, so that lines up with the 10 too. Wow.
Yeah, which is when we're ready to be reborn again, and it wouldn't surprise me if those 10 days of darkness matched up with the Swords, because let's look at a few of them, because the Swords is probably the trickiest of the suits, because it's quite dark, it's quite depressing.
And that's why we need you to wield it, Aarongorn. Aarongorn.
Well, Gandalf only shows up in times of need. I've definitely not got the beard of Gandalf. Let's just go through the first 3, not the ace, but let's go through the 2. So this is like when we're kind of you can see in terms of conspiracy theory, for example, this is where we're kind of waking up a little bit and starting to go, okay, maybe there's two ways of seeing things here, but we're very guarded. Like in this Two of Swords, there's a balance, there's a peace, but it's tense. It's like almost like cognitive dissonance. You can see this as, because we've gone from pure ace, the pure potential of thought, to kind of like dualism now. There's there's duality coming in. So she's very guarded, she's very tense, she's guarding her heart, if you notice, because now she's purely in her mind. She's not open to intuition. The moon is waning, I believe, so that intuition is kind of failing a little bit.
I think it may be waxing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yes.
In that case, yeah. The opposite. Ignore what I just said. But again, you have to kind of look at the cards around it, because you can either see the blindfold as her turning off the need to see the outside world and kind of feeling into it, but more often it's because she doesn't want to feel. She's thoughts, really. She's kind of ignoring things in the out there world, so she's blind to it. She's on guard. She's ready to chop anyone's head off that kind of questions her peace, questions her balance. So this is kind of where the sword starts going a bit wonky, because it's a very guarded piece. And Charlie actually pointed this out, which I really liked. If you look to her right, so we are the figure in this. So to her right, the grass is green. There's more growth. So take your thoughts to the right, give it back up, and you're back at the ace. You don't have to fall all the way down. But we actually do. We almost always have to go all the way before we learn, because we are Thor and Oakenshield. We are.
And the thing is, Aarongorn, I've learned that you can't stop people from going all the way. You have to let them go all the way, or else if you try to teach them preemptively, they'll go all the way later, you know? Yeah. So that's the thing. It was very interesting that card you showed, because you said the grass was on the right, but the moon was on the left. You know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and maybe she's got a choice, hasn't she? That card is often about choices, and so as we know, as the kind of moon waxes, you've got 2 weeks to really prepare yourself, to prepare the fort. So if she's choosing poorly in those 2 weeks, then this progression is going to get worse down into the swords, and then we get to the Three of Swords.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, pretty bleak. Pretty bleak. Sorrow is the esoteric. They all have esoteric names. So this is the Lord of Sorrow. So, yeah, I mean, we said in that first one that we don't want other people's ideas about the world to question our peace, to upset us. So we're kind of stuck in that cognitive dissonance. This is Saturn and Libra, this card. So this is where we're having to learn through relationship. We're having to see that, you know, the world is a grim and dreary place sometimes. But the positive thing with this is that actually this is one of the only cards in the sword suit with some very bright color. And this is kind of showing that the reason we feel sorrow so severely as we do in this card is that we have a big heart, and, you know, we're capable of that. So again,
it's so weird, because I feel like the heart is what unifies like mother and father. Father is above and mother is below. So it's interesting. There's that Trinity representation, and then like it's almost like a crucifixion. Like it's a sad thing, but it's a happy thing. You know?
Yeah. Well, exactly. And you know, what is the child? It's Libra, isn't it? So this is Saturn in Libra. Saturn is the ascended child, and then Libra is the born again child. So this is about learning our hard lessons through that relationship, and then using the tough communications, the suffering, the sorrow, turning that into wisdom, and kind of being able to go, like we said before, when the clouds come in our own personal sky, just seeing them as clouds, not taking them personally, just seeing it, not identifying with it. And then what comes next? This is actually my born day card, so I resonate a lot with this card. What comes next? Hey,
you said this is your birthday card?
Yeah. This is the Four of Swords. So what we tend to do is when we feel that suffering so intently, we retreat. We need to take a break. We need to like not see anyone and just kind of take that time for ourselves. And
Are you a Taurus?
No, Libra. Taurus moon though.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. So this is Jupiter in Libra. So this is where we've expanded in the social world as much as we can, but now we need to take that time to heal, time to rejuvenate, time to kind of come back and start to figure out where this sorrow is coming from. Because if we're there in the social world all the time, like with the 10 of Pentacles, and then the 9 of Pentacles was about going, okay, no, I need to figure this out myself. I need to be by myself and become self-aware. That's kind of the positive interpretation of this, where we use that reflective time to kind of seal ourselves off a little bit from society and the other, in order to kind of go, okay, well, what do I think? What's making sense to me? So there's a lot of that solitude in this card. So when we do it in the right way, we are, fasting, meditating, taking no thought, using the actual time to heal. But there's a polarity with this card, as with them all. Often what happens is we use it to escape, into TV, drugs, alcohol, porn, lots of different things you can do to kind of kill the hours without doing any actual healing. And again, like we said, with that addiction, it actually makes things worse because you get further and further and further away from wholeness. So this card is a bit like, and again, if we relate it to like the conspiracy kind of stuff, this is Sleeping Beauty. So cutting herself off from the out there world to protect herself from the dragon, from the evil stepmother. And what Sleeping Beauty does is create a garden of thorns around her, which is all like the barriers we create around ourselves to kind of stop that truth getting in.
But at the same time, you can't get out, huh?
Yeah, exactly. You're trapped when that happens. So that card is often about learning to have healthy boundaries, but at the same time, allow the right people in. So, perhaps there was a time in my 20s, if I'd had the opportunity to come on Charlie's show, I might have found a way to like sabotage it and just go, no, yeah, it's not the right time or whatever. Whereas because I'm hopefully a little bit wiser, hopefully a bit more mature, it's hard because sometimes like I like having my own space, having nothing planned for the rest of the day. But at the same time, you never move through it. You just get stuck. So you need to let the right ones in, like with the that TV series. Don't let the vampires in.
But Eric, real quick, I would like to say that Lao Tzu said, "To the mind that is still, the whole universe surrenders." And it's very interesting. I almost feel like rest is energy, man. I feel like work is dissipation of energy. So just like what you're saying, but the rest does not mean slothful, laziness, distraction, avoidance. So I love what you had to say about that.
Yeah, that's brilliant. It's rest when it's done right is it's attention, isn't it? Because you're there, you're in the moment, but you're not expending energy. But you're not, yeah, exactly. What you said it perfectly. I don't need to say anything else.
No. I love it when we ping pong. I mean, just the word you said, attention. I just thought it's attention. So it's like, that's the attention,
Yeah, which is also atom. All is atom.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, have you got any questions or anywhere you want to go from here? It's 1917, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know. And let me ask, how long do you want these parts to be? Do you want there to be more parts? You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
And how are you doing on time today?
Probably another half hour, something like that, if that's all right with you. So about 2 hours is good. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. I think 2 hours is right now for the awakened ones. That's still our time span. That's still our attention span. Even no matter how, you know what I mean, you're still most people are still affected by the phones and all this kind of stuff. So, but yeah, man. So let's see, questions. I almost feel like the more I learn, the more questions I'll have. Because right now, since I have a very few toys to play with, I kind of know the toys. You know what I mean? It's that kind of a thing.
Yeah, that's okay, dude. Yeah. Let's look at some wands because we've not looked at any wands yet. Wands is fire, inspiration, movement, energy.
And then in the word wand is DNA, is the W, the arc, the womb, you know, of the DNA. So of course that's fire. That's amazing. The information,
Yeah.
the light.
Exactly, yeah. And then with the sacred S to raise that fire up and dissipate it. Okay, so let's continue with this conspiracy, the waking up journey, because it's not conspiracy theory, is it? It's waking up, it's seeing the truth. And, you know, I think sometimes we kind of trivialize the conspiracy theory thing by seeing that as something separate from the spiritual journey, but it's not. It's not at all. One of my favorite teachers, Michael Tsarian, always said that conspiracy work is holy work. You know, until you look at that shadow, you're not going to see the shadow in yourself. So how can you? Again, it's that false light of the New Age movement, isn't it? It's I am love and light, and there's no such thing as shadow. It's like, okay, well, I know who. Yeah,
because so many people take darkness, you know, and even Charlie says, how does the owl see in the darkness? That's the pineal reference, you know what I mean? All this kind of stuff. So many people miss the entire other end of the spectrum, because the reality is, guys, we're in material right now, right? And with material, there is an animal spirit, right? The origin of demon was daemon, and this is being refreshed in my memory with his dark materials. There's like almost like a Pikachu. It's like paired with animals and stuff, and they're going together, kind of a thing, right? And so that's the thing. So that animal is a representation of your body. 666, mark of the beast, the mark of the beast. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because again, every time that's brought up, I need to smash it, because the people, if you're too literal, you're never going to get the whole picture, right? You're always going to have a battle of oppositions. I'm only one side, you know?
Yeah. That's it. And again, you're attached to this need to be white all the time. Obviously not in a race way, but you know, I need to be good all the time, but it's not true. It's not real. Like, you have to surrender this sense of not free will, because free will exists, but you need to surrender this. I am going to do this because it's me. It's bullshit. It's not true. You are, you know, it's that, again, the Matrix brings it up so well, the paradox of free will and destiny. And the answer is it's both. But how many times do you need to go around this modal? But if you don't know the black, if you don't sometimes choose the dark, you're automatically going to end up fighting for the black because you're ignorant of it. So again, this is why conspiracy work is holy work, because until you understand how you're manipulated and controlled and how the system works, you're never going to be able to see through it. You're not even going to realize there's a choice to be made, for one. Yeah. So
yeah, and it's the fallacy of saying the black is only out there, not also in here. That's the fallacy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't mean, you know, I'm not saying anyone should embrace darkness or evil, but to be cognizant of it, to recognize it, and to first and foremost realize it exists, because most people don't. They've been tricked into thinking that evil doesn't exist, and Lord of the Rings is just a story.
We're not blood magicians, guys. We say no acids, no lies, right? No sandy foundations, no nothing no houses that are poorly built. We're not saying be evil, don't kill, don't hurt, none of that. But we're saying black darkness is not evil. They've made it evil. You see what I'm saying? They've created these imaginary paranormal images in your head in the darkness, when in reality the darkness is stillness, is silence, is rest, you know? Whereas light is white light is movement, is motion, you know?
Exactly, yeah. White light can be used in evil ways, you know? The action, the movement manifestation can be used for evil. But yeah, black is regeneration, is rest. Like you said, it's yin, it's feminine, it's potential, it's magic. It's where everything comes from. So yeah, let's get on to the wands, and we'll start towards the end, because the 9 and the 10 are just really good examples, I think. So let's start with the 10. So we've got this guy here because wands is fire and energy and optimism and motion. Wands tends to take on especially as it goes through its journey, it just says yes to everything because it loves the challenge. It wants to take on everything. And what happens is it takes on too much and
Oh
gets
no, it bites off
restriction.
more than it can chew.
Yeah, absolutely. But it still carries on because it's determined. I can do it, don't worry. But it's Sagittarius, this card, so it's that boundless energy, continually going, seeing what's beyond the horizon. But it's Saturn in Sagittarius, so it's that limited. Sagittarius does not like to be limited. I'm a Sagittarius rising, and I do not like to be limited by anything. And this is Saturn coming in and going, excuse me, energy cannot be boundless. There needs to be some kind of force that restricts, otherwise nothing stays together. We don't learn anything. And literally matter would just fly off. There'd be no form. So Saturn comes in to kind of limit that boundless one's energy. So yeah, this is where the ones have taken on so much that it's like the everyday burdens, this is, the end of the conspiracy journey where we just take on the weight of the world and just go, I need to solve it. I need to do this. It has to be me that fixes it. And you're taking on everything. You're taking on the education system, you're taking on big pharma, you're taking on all this kind of stuff without realizing that first of all, there's a drama unfolding. Yes, we play a massive part in that, and our level of understanding and consciousness and state of being will have the biggest effect more than anything.
Yeah,
The actions.
Aarongorn, you're describing me. For me, the story of my life is skip drama button. I just want to skip it. I just want to say, screw it. I don't care about your feelings. I just want to give you the truth.
Well, it's very Sagittarius. Yeah, I bet you've got some Sagittarius in you somewhere.
Yes, I forgot what it was. Yes.
Probably more than likely. So the thing with this card is that we get so weighed down by all these responsibilities and burdens. That becomes our main focus. So this can be, the weight of the world. We're so focused on that we're not focused on the spiritual journey. And if you notice, he's actually not that far from home, which is over on this side here to the right. If you notice, he's not that far away. The ground is level. There's no obstacles there. So if you kind of just took stock, cast aside whatever burdens aren't serving him anymore, or just have a breather and take stock of where you are, you realize that actually it doesn't take that much more energy to get home. What do we need to do? We need to stop eating for a bit and eat the right things. We need to breathe. We need to sit still or walk in a still state of mind, whatever meditation is for you. And that's it. That's how we get home. But then what happens often is that we don't start with that end in mind, which is, our spiritual journey. There's I really like the Stephen Covey self-development author, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. One of them is start with the end in mind. So have an idea of the goal and then work your way back. So if the goal is oneness, is unity consciousness, then these burdens here you can see that you don't need to identify with them. But if you don't start with that end in mind, look at where, if he veers to the left slightly, there's a plowed field here, which is basically where he's just been, because this is where he's gathered the wands. So if he doesn't start that trajectory in the right way, say for example, he goes off down the New Age trap, he's going to go left and he's going to end up back in that field, back right at the start, and not actually achieve that goal, which is Sagittarius. Sagittarius's goal is transcend the animal, or let's unite the animal and the man with God.
But Aarongorn, let me quickly comment, because that was just a fascinating point. And so this is like a really tricky / dangerous subject, right? Because when you say starting with the end in mind, it can often be associated with profit, with motive, with ambition, with all of these things, which means being kind of cutthroat and pushing people down. But at the same time, starting with the end in mind can be looked at as finesse, as finish, as the finest element, as a finished quality, meaning one moves whole, one moves in one motion, kind of a thing, right? And then, whereas I think, because I think that the true Tao is kind of like no effort, And so this is the thing. So if you start with I make an effort to change reality for like a purpose, like for a reason, because I want to make money out of it, or I want to exploit something out of it. See, that reason for that effort was born out of a disorderly reason, if that makes sense. And so it's very funny because it's so tricky in that sense, where it's like it needs to be effortless, but at the same time, you need to again start with the end with the start. You need to have a clean finish, I think. So I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, all brilliant points. Yeah, and what is he doing? His end in mind is for either being seen to be the best wands gatherer, or all his focus is on this effort that it's taking to get there. And at the same time, he's not realizing that actually this home, in reality, this unity consciousness isn't even over there. It's right here where he is. He just needs to stop focusing on the heaviness on the dark side of Saturn, which is that limiting factor, and instead get back in touch with the Sagittarius, which sees that higher wisdom. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go on. Oh, you're muted.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, returning home with the home inside of you. Just fantastic, Aarongorn, right? Like
Yeah.
we're going back on a journey and coming back home, but you never left home really inside. That's what I'm saying.
That's the illusion, and that's why this is the 10, because again, it's fallen all the way into matter. So it's all the way that one's energy, which loves to be in, one, which because it's pure fire. So when it gets to 10, it's almost like a little crackly flame, I guess. That's it's still got massive amounts of energy, but it's just very limited because it's in matter now. It's in form. So until we kind of realize that, and that's what, because it's the 10, it's about waking up from that, realizing that matter and form and all of that is pure energy. It is all God. So when we don't see it as something in the negative side of Saturn, and when we don't see it as something as dead or restrictive, then we're liberated from that, because we can see through it. We can see that there's magic there, and that spirit never gets weighed down completely, especially when you're in the now. In the now, there is no restriction. Okay, so going back to the 9 now, 9 of Wands, and this to me just sums up me in 2020, just before discovering, because I didn't discover Q until March 2020. Then shortly afterwards found Charlie, which, godsend, and yourself. This was me back then, and I think a lot of people just before they find Q and the plan. So this 9 of Wands is about, again, Wands energy is about fighting and energy and competition, and it's like kind of like the 5 of Wands is all about healthy competition, childlike, fighting, but not very serious. As you kind of get onward, it becomes more serious, more of a war. And this is the war-weary soldier that's been fighting a war for, years or decades for some people. So what happens is, as you kind of get stuck in that warlike state of mind, as you get, PTSD to a certain extent. I mean, I'm not comparing myself with someone who has been to war at all, but it's that constantly feeling like you're having to fight or defend is the more accurate way of seeing this. A lot of the other cards in Wands is about offense. So going on the offense, striking first, whereas this card, it's because it's getting towards the 10, it's getting more burdened, it's getting more tired. That fire energy is kind of dying down a bit. It's more about defensive now. So this is about seeing everything and everyone and every movie and every song and everything is Tavistock or Fabian Society, just guarding yourself constantly because the world is upside down. But what happens is you then don't, look at him, he's muscular, he's got very clear eyes, he can see really well. But at the same time, his head is bandaged, so he's not whole. He's got a psychic wound because for him everything is the enemy. When I was reading the front page of a newspaper, I'd laugh because I could point out every single piece of the agenda that they were trying to tell us, or in every single movie that came out, my attention would instantly go to the dark side of the symbolism. Even though I knew that symbolism was neutral and that, you know, it could be used either way, my automatic response, because I've been, you know, doing this for years, was they're trying to get us to think that, and, you know, that's not healthy. It's not whole, and it's not true.
Yes.
And it took, you know, discovering Q and Charlie's work to realize that, I mean, don't get me wrong, I always knew this was God's plan and that everything was for a reason, and I never fell into that level of despair. But at the same time, I never saw a way out of the Dark World Order in my lifetime, for example. And then the kind of what it takes to break out of this card is that letting down of your defenses. Yeah. So, yeah, because although he feels like he's quite well defended, if you notice those wands, the kind of barrier that he's put up, there's gaps between them, you know, arrows could get through, a spear could get through. So even though he thinks he's well protected, actually he's not. Again, he's by himself. So this is us when we're stuck in that way of seeing things without a community around us, not often for our fault, because that's the world hates it. Hates this way of seeing things.
It's beautiful, man. But that whole image of being always on guard is not a bad thing until it becomes a thing where you can't go beyond the guard that you've set. You know what I mean? So it's almost like, so it's amazing how these cards hit both aspects of it, you know? And so there's a kind of a thing where it's like, you have to defend yourself because the world is always in attack mode and always in conflict. But when the world isn't in conflict, you need to not be on defense mode, you know?
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, you know, what Josh often says, that there's a reason for, and my understanding has always been, because I've looked at Norse mythology, that there's a reason for evil, there's a reason for Babylon, and it's for consciousness's evolution, because without that antagonistic force, you don't have a hero, you don't have tension, you can't temper a sword to make it strong without that friction, without that thing that pushes it to become a blade, to become, you know, a weapon that can be.
And the heat, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. The heat. Yeah, and this is one. So that heat is helping us to wake up, you know. But yeah, if we're always in defensive, then we're seeing Babylon and Empire, the enemy, as a wrongness. And again, we're not saying that we condone what these evil bastards do, but the higher, the largest perspective is that it's all a movement of God. It's all one story, and that includes the enemy. And this is what
I can bolster that point because in the trilogy with Matrix, when he's blind, he just sees pure energy. He doesn't see machine. He doesn't see man. It's just energy. There's no good or bad, and so that's why he can, with no conflict, meet the machine god or whatever.
Yeah, and this is what we were saying on the show last night. Plato and Socrates, and I can't remember the name of Socrates' teacher. It was a woman, and they knew that it was all the good. Before the apple and the tree of knowledge, Adam and Eve knew that it was all one, that it was all God, all good. As soon as the serpent, the deceiver, said that there's good and evil, that's where the descent starts, the fall starts, because then you take that, there's separation, there's a right and a wrong, there's an up and a down. That ends up being taken all the way to where, you know, they're eating children. That is obviously so far wrong, it doesn't even bear thinking about. But again, the highest realization is that it's all the good, it's all one story. Can't remember what the original point was, but what was I saying before you said you can bolster that point? It doesn't matter, it's gone.
You were saying energy is energy. You can't really say it's good or bad, kind of a thing.
Yeah. So that's the tree of knowledge, is this separation between God and not God, or good and evil. But actually, it's all
light and darkness.
Yeah, exactly. Like Alan Watts always says, you need one for the other. It's like, what color is a zebra? Is it white with black stripes, or is it black with white stripes? It's not. You need both. You need that contrast.
Beautiful.
And this is what Norse mythology taught, was that Odin, which is Christ, had a blood brother, which is Loki. And when in mythology, when someone is someone's brother, it usually means that they're actually the same. They're just polarized versions.
Yes.
So Loki is seen as hey.
Smith is Neo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
The dragon is Bilbo.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, Loki is the deceiver. He's the trickster. He's the mischief maker. But actually, when you read the stories, the gods don't get any of their magic or grow without Loki's mischief and deception.
Yes.
And it's Loki that leads the armies of the dead in Ragnarok, which is Revelation, essentially. And it's only through Revelation that, you know, we become liberated. So it takes that ending of Babylon, ending of the world, it takes that last battle, the battle of the Black Gate, to become liberated. So you need that trickster element. And
Yes.
again, if we separate ourselves from that trickster element or the deceiver, if we see that's something out there and not already within us, then again, we're only doing half the spiritual work and we're never going to be whole. We're deceiving ourselves by not seeing the deceiver within.
Yes.
So if you don't recognize that within you, you're never going to be able to rise above it, because as soon as you recognize it within you and don't attach to it, then you don't need to go and be Loki and cause all sorts of darkness and mayhem. You just recognize it, and then you can choose, but you can choose with consciousness. Because again, to go back to the analogy of the chessboard, if you don't recognize that black mischief, darkness, deceiver within you, you're automatically going to be deceived, and you're automatically going to fight that side of it without knowing. And while you're thinking, I'm all love and light, me, I'm a starseed.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on that.
And, you know, this is the problem with people that are psyoped, right? Because basically, seeing the trick is the end of deception. So really, there is truth in the lie, because the lie is false. That is truth. You see what I'm saying? So seeing the false is the truth, because if you couldn't see the false, there would be no truth. And so that's the thing. So really, you know, with the trickster archetype and all of this, I think is the fool. I think is, you know, I'm just guessing, right? I think is the Joker. You know, I think it's the role that plays all roles, because the trickster, you know, is always pretending to be different roles. Is always acting. And so I, you know, in conjunction with Archaic's work, I think that the trickster is Enki, is the one who encodes the fact that we can leave the system. And I think it's possible. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. It's possible that the Garden of Eden story and the Babylon story was completely flipped. That the snake was Enki, was the snake knowledge, was the chakra knowledge, was the subtle body, the underground knowledge. Because the people who lie, right, like the Matrix world and all this stuff, they're boisterous and they have to constantly be in battle and conflict, whereas Zion just hides under a trick, under a veil. So it's that kind of a thing. So like truth doesn't really need to prove anything to anyone. So if you can't see the truth, it'll just, like the trickster will just trick you. I think that's the easiest way to not cause cognitive dissonance, but at the same time preserve truth. What do you think to that?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's kind of where I was going with Odin and Loki being the same, because if you read the Eddas, it's said that Odin and Loki who were blood brothers, so they're the same person, made a pact way back when, but they don't tell you what that pact is. But if you kind of read between the lines, what the pact is that Odin splits into Odin, the Christ figure, and Loki, the antagonist, in order so that reality does this and rises.
You know, it's crazy because Satan is characterized as Lucifer, but Jesus is also characterized as the morning star Lucifer.
Yeah. And this is what, you know, again, it's an allegory for how the one, so let's say Odin is the one, the one splits into duality, Odin and Loki, black and white, so that it can do this, dun, 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 dun. and the two become one, and then the one becomes two again, and it does this, and it just goes do 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 do, so that we rise, so that we become wise as we rise. What was I going to say then?
Yeah, and then proton, electron, proton, electron, Ra, L. That's the only form the universe knows how to create is electrical, and then and it's just a back and forth. And if you don't have that ping pong, there is no matrix, there is no life, there is no world in the material. But outside the material, I'm sure there's something better. I don't know.
Yeah, no, there's no movement, is there? There's no story without an enemy or a darkness or a drama. There's no story, and God is a story. God is a dream, and it would be a boring dream without some kind of intrigue, something that makes you sit on the edge of your seat and go just so that at the end of 2,000 years or 6,000 years of Babylonian rule, we can go, "Ooh, that was close." But that's what God does, because it's to be infinite and eternal. You would be bored if you didn't have something to keep you
Aarongorn,
entertained.
you're exactly right. The movie is I said once that the twist makes the movie, so it's stupid to be on the evil side, because come on, in every movie there's a twist, guys. In every movie there's a turnaround, a turning of tables, a turning of the tide, so it's so funny that you say that, because a movie needs both good and bad actors. Amazing.
Exactly. And that's what Michael Jackson is singing about in Thriller. He's saying that while you're here, it feels real, and it feels like the demons can possess you, and death is real, and all this kind of stuff. What does he say? No mere mortal can resist the evil of the thriller. Yeah, no mere mortal can, but when you become immortal, when you become Christed, then you can, because you see the truth that it is a movie. He says, "Let me hold you tight while we're watching this movie." Basically, don't worry, it's just a movie. It's just a ride. But yeah, to get quickly back to what the point you made about maybe the Garden of Eden was flipped. That's another thing Michael Tsarian suggests, is that the serpents were actually the druids, were actually the Lemurians that were coming back to Atlantis to help free the slave populace.
Yes. Yeah, please continue with that. But the St. Patrick's Day was a day for killing Gnostics, because killing snakes. You see what I'm saying? So yeah, but keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, that sacred serpent energy, which is just the knowledge of the Kundalini, isn't it? And the esoteric truth about our physiology. And perhaps the Druids, the Lemurians were coming back to the Garden of Eden, which you can see as Atlantis, to try and say, listen, you have some overlords now. Maybe they're not all what they say they are. And maybe you need to come out. So maybe that fall actually wasn't such a bad thing. But I tend to believe the fall is more about us going on the prodigal son journey to come back to consciousness. Again, like we said before, this fall.
Exactly. Wait, real quick, it's not about the fall, it's about the get up, isn't it? And people are too focused on the fall.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like you said before, you got to fall as far as you go. And to just quickly get back to addiction, when you look at success rates with addiction therapies and things like sorry, there's someone at the door, Eugene. I think Melissa's just on her way. Okay, just bear with me 1 second.
Sure. But I'll expound on that. So basically, a lot of people, their lives are defined by a fall. Their lives are defined by a previous mistake. You see what I'm saying? So it's very interesting that even the Bible story, and this is the thing with original sin. I think original sin is bullshit. I don't think we did anything wrong just for being here. You see what I'm saying? And so I can work with both stories of the Garden of Eden. I just need someone to tell me all the facts, right? So I can work with the story that the snake was bad, and that basically the snake was asking to participate in duality, and that duality can be a shallow breath, acidic eating, ejaculation, and bad thought, right? So I can agree with that story where that's the fall. But I also agree with the story that what do you call it? Or that it could be true that we were in a contained structure, a control structure, a simulation, a module, right? A module, a code, a set of lower codes that basically it's like a training wheels kind of a thing. But the whole point is you take the training wheels off. So what I'm saying is this world is something you need to take off eventually after you're done getting the training. So in that aspect to it, maybe the existing realm, because Eden is like a walled-in enclosure or whatever, right? So maybe, just like we're talking about, not being always on guard is not the best way forward. You know, when there is no war, you shouldn't be in guard. So really, there's a dual meaning, in my opinion, of how you can take the Garden of Eden story. So sorry to take away from your flame, Mr. Wands.
No, not at all. Sorry to jump out. It was just a package for next door. So yeah, just to quickly talk about what you said about this kind of perhaps a duality of Eden. The Ace of Pentacles shows that brilliantly. So yeah, in the Ace of Pentacles, you're in Eden. Look, there's a beautiful garden wall here going on. You know, there's no worries about money because everything is, you know, existing there for you in potential. But the kind of often there's another side to seeing the Ace of Pentacles where we're not going on our journey. We're not becoming the prodigal son, and we're resisting it to try and stay in this kind of safe and secure state. Because if you look outside of Eden, there's a mountain range. So if we stay in Eden, we never have that experience of climbing the mountain for ourselves.
Wow, there's no way to improve, huh?
Yeah, exactly. Because if you're constant, like we said before about God being eternal and infinite, if you're in that state constantly, there's no progression because you're already everything, omniscient, omnipresent, and whatever the other one is.
Omnipotent, potent,
yeah,
omnipotent.
yeah. So there's no progress, there's no contrast. So you forget that you're the infinite, that you're eternal, in order to be a Eugene and an Aaron, so that you can experience the wonders of life and limitation. You experience limitation, and people often think that that's a really bad thing. But actually, do you really know freedom if you don't experience limitation? Yeah. Do you not need limits for you to be able to push beyond them and really know what freedom is?
Aren't there laws to be broken? And law backwards is, aren't there walls to be jumped over, right? So it's all these kind of things. Aren't limits there so you can transcend them?
Yeah, yeah. And again, we're not saying that, you know, go and break rules just for breaking rules, because there's natural law. And the great thing is that natural law is the true law.
Yes.
You know, break all the statutes and things when it's safe that you want. Don't give a shit about them because they're not true law. Yeah. Break natural law and you'll find the consequences. And, you know, it's not up to me to judge or say that don't do that. It already is work. It's in the system. It's how it works.
Yeah, and it's so simple, man. It's just don't hurt, right? It's that simple.
Don't steal. Don't steal is the basic, is natural law. Don't steal someone's possessions. Don't steal someone's life or right not to be assaulted, or to say no to sexual advances. Don't steal. That's the basic one. Like you say, don't cause no harm. That's it. Yeah, just to finish the thought I was saying about the fall, and it ties in with what you said before about, you know, you can't stop someone falling, because when you look at addiction and things like AA or NA or all these other programs, what you find is that they have less of a success rate than if someone was to do it themselves. And what tends to happen is someone has to fall to rock bottom, and then it's that experience of hitting whatever that bottom is that actually changes them. And yeah, unfortunately for a lot of people, it's death or losing their families or whatever, but it's that thing that actually snaps them out of that trance and goes, right, this enough is enough. That 10 of Swords moment of going, I've tried it every other way apart from the right way, which is sorting this out.
Yeah, and that's a key point you brought up, because like going to these things like Alcohol Anonymous, if that becomes your identity, that becomes your worth. And so you just want to keep that in your life. You don't want to leave that comfort of going back there and saying, I'm an alcoholic. And so that's the thing, right, Aarongorn?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it's this victim mentality. And again, I'm not saying it doesn't work. It does work for some people. All I'm saying is that there's, you know, they talk about a trust in a higher power, which I agree with, but then it's this crutch. It becomes a crutch, and it also becomes like well, for the main thing is it starts off with a false notion that you are making some kind of sacrifice, or that alcohol is some kind of pleasure or crutch, and that you need to feel deprived by not taking that poisonous substance. You start off with a false belief that alcohol does something for you. And if you have that set state of mind, every single day is going to be a battle. And it's that every single day is going to feel like the 10 of Wands, like a long, hard slog, rather than starting off with the right state of mind, which was that alcohol seemed to fill a void, but it itself created that void. It creates its own need. So that the only way to stop that withdrawal relief is to just go, I've seen through it. I've seen that cycle and I don't want any of it. Just by stopping, I break free of that cycle. And I don't need to feel like I'm making a sacrifice. I don't need to feel deprived. I'll feel empowered again because I've got this fucking demon off my back. Because that's what alcohol is. It's alcohol, which is a body-eating spirit. It's gin. Why do you think they call it gin or spirits?
Yeah.
And I've been there. Don't get me wrong. I used to drink quite heavily and had a problem with it until I found that Easy Way company that helped me see through it. And it was like, boom, one session done. Don't need that anymore. Never craved a drink again. It's easy.
Yeah, I dropped meat like that. I think it was around 2022 or something like that, or like 2020 TOO, right? But at the same time, what do you call it? Yeah, dude. I mean, it's a weird thing. Oh, but yeah, I was still eating like Beyond Beef and all this bullshit, so I was probably eating human meat even after. But anyhow, so yeah, dude. But yeah, I just think what you just said was so powerful. And yeah, man, like I don't know what else to say. But yeah, do you want to wrap things up, or do you want to keep going for just a bit? Like if you have any closing thoughts, because what you just said was so powerful. I always love ending on a powerful bang. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a good place. I think that's a good place to finish. Yeah, I've really enjoyed today. I was quite because usually I come into these things with lots of notes, like I need to know everything.
Yes.
But I think it's just better to just have a conversation, like you said. And yeah, I really enjoyed that. So thank you for the opportunity.
Just wing it, right? Do we have wings for a reason? You know, it's like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like not having any expectations. And how beautiful was this conversation, right? You bring up cards, and then we talk about the cards, and then suddenly it relates right to life. And then everyone can relate on that level. Like even the people that don't necessarily want to look at the card can still say, oh, now I know what the significance of the card is because it's based on my life. And so, yeah, man, just thank you again. And yeah, and after the show, just send me whatever links you want. I'll put it all on the description. And yeah, please go check out Aarongorn out. Anything else you'd like to say or leave the audience with?
No, thank you for listening. If I realize that a lot of people are very skeptical or wary of tarot, and I get that because there's a lot of fortune teller types who, it's not necessarily always used for good, but the way I use it and the way it's supposed to be used is simply a tool for self-awareness. It's a meditation. It's a way of finding the distilled wisdom of our ancestors. It's all the Bible. It's the one story, and then having a tool to meditate on. That's all it is. And I would encourage anyone to get their own deck and to just start using it and just start learning about yourself and the cards, and because it's symbolism as well. And so be symbolically literate is one of the biggest strengths you can have in life. So thank you again so much, Eugene. Always a pleasure, dude.
Amen. Thank you for opening all the doors today. Yeah, thank you. Sayonara, everybody.